everyone, Sis here with another build guide, this time for my Berserker Cyclone, which later turned into a Slerker, and I'll explain a little bit about that. But this was a Cyclone build that I made primarily to level a Marauder so I could respec into a Juggernaut Herald of Agony build later. So obviously Herald of Agony can be a little slow to level, and I didn't really want to level to like 92, 93 on a Juggernaut, especially not with Herald of Agony because it's very slow. So I made the Berserker for that, and I wasn't planning to play it much more than 90, but I did end up playing it to 92, I believe, just because it was so fun. And yeah, this is the build guide for that. It's pretty high damage, pretty high survival, not massive AoE. And I think you can do fairly well on a budget as well. First, I'm going to start by explaining how we use Path of Building in the guides, and we use it quite a lot more than most guides you might be used to. If you've already seen this part, you can move to the description down below and click a timestamp button to skip directly to the guide. So first you need Path of Building. Path of Building is a third-party program that you can download, and it's in the description down below. It's completely safe, and most people use it. It's a very powerful tool that lets you plan out your builds and import items, stuff like that. Now, once you have Path of Building, you can go and import the Path of Building link here by pasting it here. Once you have that, it should look, well, depends what build you're importing, because I'll use this for everything. But it should look like the build of the video you're watching. And what we do, and I'm using a Gladiator Thunder Cyclone build here as an example, I show a step-by-step of what the skill tree looks like at certain levels. So at early levels, it's very, very easy, especially if you're a new player, to follow. And I also say when to ascend, and the ascension points are generally here, and I'll talk about that in the specific video as well, and why things are chosen. But as you can see, the skill tree is evolving over time, and sometimes there will be variations for, you know, if it's like different weapons, if it's one-hander, two-hander, and a lot of things like that. But wait, there's more. Under the skills, we usually do all like the different skills plus the leveling one. I'm trying out a new sort of like alphabetized group. So this is like your main attack skill. So as you can see here, you have ground slam to 8 to 12, but at 12 it gets replaced by Sunder, and I kept that in the same like A, just so you're understanding what I'm replacing it with if there's no leveling video accompanying it. So hopefully that'll make it very clear. Same here with obviously at early level you're using Ancestral Protector, and then you replace that same B with War Chief later on. So we'll also put notes, like for example here, Pulverize doesn't exist yet in Path of Building, and there's a few things that they're just not in Path of Building at the time that I'm making this guide. This is going to happen a lot on videos that are made around launch. Just Path of Building's not updated yet, so that's just not what much we can do about. And for the most part, I'll always put gems in a priority level. Like my first priority is always going to be Onslaught, just because it ups your clear speed so much while killing. And you can see like different utilities and stuff. And another example here is plus blood and sand, because that again doesn't exist in Path of Building. We also have different types of items. So here we have early game axis, mid game axis, and end game axis. I think the jewels are displayed here. Yes. So the way I do this is I make some like fairly okay items that are like, you know, depending on how fast you play, somewhere that you'll have them between day 1 to 3. And if you don't know how to get a Tabula, for example, you can farm that in Act 9 fairly easily in Blood Aqueduct. And we go through here, and it's I never in my guides will put resists on the life gear, because just you need to be resist capped. That's very important. 75% all resist. Remember that you lose resist in Act 5 and 10. And then on the jewels, I'll try to do 4-slot jewels and try to say as many good stats as possible for that build. So there's no like, you don't see the same one twice here, but all of these work for the build. Hopefully that'll help. And then this is generally how I recommend rolling flasks. There's even more in the notes as well. Mr. Madiki will generally go through and tell you exactly where to buy the skill gems that you're needed. This is actually a tip by another streamer called Lyric, who said he was sad there was nothing like this in Path of Exile guide. So I was like, that is actually a great idea for new players. So we have that. So if you're wondering where to buy things, or if it can't be bought by your specific class, we call it a mule, then you have to use another character to use it or to buy it. And all the details for that is in here. So hopefully it now makes more sense how to use the guides and how they work. Let's continue with the build guide. I started off with Ground Slam into Sunder, and I did try to switch to Cyclone as soon as I got it at level 28, but early on it was definitely a lot less damage than Sunder. I feel like even though I was using like leveling weapons and stuff, it was a lot slower than I expected Cyclone to be early on. I think once I got the Cauterizer, which is a great leveling unique at level like 40 something, it was great. It was great using Cyclone then. But Sunder has been really good for leveling. I'm sure there's other really good leveling skills as well, but Sunder just gets so much damage. So that was really nice. As far as leveling uniques goes and how I leveled, I did use two-handers the entire way through except until level 11. So I started off with two random one-handers just alked, and then at level 11 I went to Limb Split, then I went to Wide Swing, and then I went to the Blood Reaper, and then finally to Cauterizer. And I used Cauterizer all the way until my like high level Valax later on. A good way to level can be using Fossil Gloves, and this works for everything. So what you do is you do a Metallic Fossil, and a Scorched Fossil, and a Prismatic Fossil, and you use that on like a level 1 glove that you just buy off the vendor. I usually just use an Energy Shield glove, but it doesn't matter what you use. And if you hit both the elemental rolls, they'll say something like adds X amount to fire damage and adds X amount to lightning damage. And what that does is, this is global damage. This will affect your heralds, this will affect your spells, and this will affect your melee damage. So if you're a spellcaster, your heralds will be one-shotting. If you're a melee character, you'll be getting lots of elemental damage, and it's really good. I used a Meganord's Girdle, and I actually used the 50% movement speed boost, but obviously like Wanderlust is good, Gold Rim is good. There's a lot of leveling uniques you can use. Two Black Hearts as well is nice for early on. And the bandits for this is Alira. This does end up being crit, and that makes it a lot easier to gear with resist wise as well. You obviously want that crit multi. Now I've got we're gonna have like an early game and different end game setup here as well, but I've also included exactly the items that I ended up using as my end game setup. So I got a really high damage Valax here with the quality doesn't show in POB, but with the 28 quality plus the 17 crafted, it ended up being 680 PDPS. So this was a really good axe. I actually wish this was a Flesh Ripper, because obviously I don't get the insane Slayer 8% crit passive. So having had that would have been great, but it's still a really good axe. Whenever I was initially POBing this, I had something like 500,000 damage with everything up, and I was like, that's not necessarily low, but I feel it's really low for the way I've built this and set this up. Even though I focused really hard on getting it tanky enough for hardcore, like ascendancy wise, I didn't take Aspect of the Carnage, which on softcore you can end up dropping Blitz and taking Aspect of Carnage for even more damage. But for hardcore, I don't want to deal with the 10% increased damage taken, which is it's a lot. So I ended up having 500k, and I was like, this is weird. That's like, you know, relatively low for this. And what turns out was the problem, that the axe I had as my gear set, without looking about it, was just 200 damage instead of like an actual good axe, like 400 or 500 or 600. I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. So if you manage to get 500k damage with like a garbage axe that you can just alch, then that's actually pretty good. a lot of the gear is relatively cheap and obtainable. Like for the in-game stuff, obviously Comb's Heart is very expensive this league. You can self-farm one in Volcano. The cards are actually like on a decent drop rate. Devotee's Devotion you can self-farm in Arena. There's the cards that drop for like a unique Nightmare Bassinet there. So while they are fairly expensive items right now, they are also self-farmable. So even if you're an SSF, that is something you can obtain over time. Oscar, they're really, really cheap. I did want to switch those out later on. I just couldn't afford to. Ideally, I would either... I don't think I can actually fit Tomb Fist in this build because it's so gem intensive to build that I had to use the Unset Ring. And actually wanted a second one. But ideally, I would have wanted a Shaper Unset Ring with Assassin's Mark on hit. And then just get some beefy gloves anyway. My boots were okay. That was actually my main source of Leech because... in the build, I'm not really getting a lot of Leech. Pretty straight amulet, and then I have like minus mana crafted on one ring, and I basically had no mana issues. This I was very lucky to find this while I was an SSF, and it's like a beastly crit accuracy ring. The Unset Ring was like super needed, and I'm even taking one gem setup, or one gem out of my Val Double Strike setup because it's so gem intensive. And you can see the endgame setup here. So this is like filled to the brim with gems. You're even missing a support gem on Val Double Strike. But it's still worth having. Like, it's a 3-link Val Double Strike is a lot of damage. With everything up, if I had a Flesh Ripper, I would probably be able to drop crit strikes. It is actually a large damage boost, but I feel it's a little inconsistent. I might play around with it later, but if you drop in crit strikes and do like melee fists, you do end up with quite a lot more damage, but then you only have 56% effective crit. However, if I was on a Flesh Ripper, I would have something like an 8 base crit, and then it would be a lot easier to do. Also, obviously, the Blitz charges are dropping quite a lot, so if you're doing this on softcore, you do get a lot more damage, and you still have a fairly high effective crit. So you do have some options in changing it around. I like a high consistency on my crit. Defensively, the build has the Fortify nodes, and you have Soul of Steel. So with permanent Fortify, pretty tanky. Endurance charges I was generating by leap siming with the endurance charge on stun. So I pretty much always, as long as I was not super lazy and just holding right click, I always had endurance charges up. So late game you should be able to get like 7k life if you're not doing my special version that I'm about to talk about. But so yeah, 7k life with pretty heavy mitigation. I didn't really feel at danger much. But so what happened in my special version and the skill tree was slightly different. I'll show you. I call it my glorious vanity setup. And I talked a little bit about this in like a Berserker overview video. But I have a glorious vanity jewel. And this is using, it says here as well, it uses Doriani. The number doesn't actually matter that much for this jewel. It's using Glorious Vanity Doriani, and I put it up here. And what that does is it changes this keystone, which is really annoying for streamers because people kept asking me, why do you have Elemental Equilibrium? But it changes Elemental Equilibrium. 50% of all damage bypasses your energy shield. Very similar to the way Chaos damage currently bypasses anyway. And it gives you 20% of your max life added as extra energy shield. And what this ends up doing is it gave me like nearly 2000 energy shield, and I had like 6.5k life. And obviously I was missing a lot of life nodes, so if I got to like 95, 96, I would have had something like maybe 7k life and 2500 energy shield, right? That's putting me at around 9k, and it's splitting the damage between the energy shield and the life. So it's really, really nice that way as well. And there's an extra added thing and reason we do this. We're using Soul Tether. So whenever you're starting a map, your energy shield starts at 0. And this build already really struggles with int, so having a belt that gives you up to like 40 int was great anyway. Like getting the dex and int required for this build was really hard, and I had to like do little crafts. Sometimes I would have to have 30 dex or 30 int on the tree. It was a pain to get it. So the way this works is you start at 0 energy shield, and then when you hit monsters, you start leeching because you're full life. And once you're full life, it starts automatically leeching on energy shield. And the way this works in Path of Exile and how Leech works is that Life Leech is 20% of your max life without being modified. So Energy Shield only has 10%. However, when you're leeching with a Soul Tether, you're basically leeching at 30% of your life. So it increases the amount that you can like leech, and it's never counted as full. You're always leeching, especially with Blood Rage on. So you're never hitting exactly full Energy Shield. And Soul Tether also gains 5% of max life as extra Energy Shield, so you're getting 25% extra effective HP, and it basically turns into the Slayer Overleech. With the life leech effects are not removed at full life. So I could, if I was running around, I'd see that my energy shield was like still leeching, even though I was taking damage and stuff. It was bumping up and down, up and down. So one of the strongest nodes from Slayer is what you get from doing this combination. It felt really safe. I was doing a 4 emblem, and I never, like, my energy shield didn't even drop off much. It didn't go below 50%, and it was just like bouncing up very quickly. I would definitely invest into Valpact with this later on. Obviously, I didn't get like super into playing this Berserker. This is definitely something I want to remake and do again. I would do Valpact, try to fit that in somewhere. Obviously, I ended up dropping Wrecking Ball, and I might end up dropping more damage nodes because you have quite a lot damage on this build anyway. If you're on softcore, you can drop loads of the survival nodes, maybe the fortify stuff. But yeah, I would definitely want Valpact in this. And I would want a little bit more leech rate. Right now I was only getting my leech from the right now I was only getting my leech from the boots and from Blood Rage. But I would definitely want more on that. Maybe on like an Elder Amulet could be a good idea. I mean, Carnage Heart would be a budget one and gives you loads of stats, just not a lot of life. Oh, we should put this in the leveling process. If you're having any mana issues, there's a couple of ways to solve this for the build. You can take the leech nodes down here, although that can be a bit of a stretch early on. You can take on jewels, you can get mana gained on hit, or you can also get mana leech or physical damage leeched as mana. That definitely helps early on. Until you do enough damage, like in the 50s maybe, I would recommend just using a mana flask. Yeah, early on, just use a mana flask until you're in your maybe 50s, and then you should be able to rely on just having the leech. A ring with mana cost reduced, like mana or less mana used per hit, helps a lot, especially if you're Cyclone. And you can also take Revelry. So there's a lot of options to solve the mana issues here. You can have leech on boots, however, like endgame, I didn't feel like I needed this. I'd rather have like the attack and cast speed on boots, Enchant, because your mana issues are completely removed just by having -7 or -8 mana on hit, or you can get this ring enchant later on, minus total mana cost of skills, and then that like completely sorts your mana issues out. And for leveling as well, you can use the Herald of Ash and Herald of Purity for leveling until you get Pride. Pride is really great. I enjoyed using it. As for jewels, you have a lot of nodes you can get, like increased damage with axes, melee critical strikes. Max life was what I was going for the most. I ended up getting some resist on a jewel because it's fairly hard to gear this. And as stat priority, you want as much crit chance and crit multi as you can get on a weapon. And the way weapons are, I have a full guide on how to craft your own weapon, but it's all about the physical damage per second that your axe can deal. So something having like, you know, high DPS, but some of it being elemental, that doesn't really matter. The important factors here is you want a high percentage physical roll, as high as you can on the flat physical roll, and high attack speed. Those are like the three things you want. So if something's above like 400 PDPS, 500 PDPS, you've got a decent axe for this build. The Pantheons I was using was Solaris, but that's mostly as a survival one. You can use the Lunaris for more speed. It gives you speed whenever enemies are near you. The Garukan upgraded one with Dig makes you faster as well. That can be really nice. But Endgame I always end up with Shakari with immune to poison. So all in all, I was very, very happy with the build. It had high damage, high survival, I had, especially with Val double strike and fast up, it must be like something like 2 or 3 million damage. So it was pretty cool at doing emblems. Even though I focused very hard on the survival side, I was able to do a 4 emblem fairly easily. I only managed to kill each boss 2 or 3 times. So I wasn't particularly happy with that. I think a lot of that is to do with the small AoE of this one. It's nowhere near as big AoE as Slayer, and I do feel like Slayer might be a better ascendancy, but this was definitely a lot of fun. Like, it was leap slamming so much, and I get the Slayer Leech anyway. A lot of cool things I really enjoyed about this, but I do want to try a crit Slayer. And obviously that gets so much AoE as well. It felt good playing a Berserker. I definitely enjoyed it. I can see myself making a Berserker later. Obviously a very, very high damage. And the blitz charges were really, really fun to play with. It was so much attack speed. And then the rage was really good. Whenever I pop Berserk and like say I want to kill like a emblem unique, that thing was dying. If I pop Val double strike and I switch my stance to the blood stance, that thing is dying really quickly. I think with everything up like Berserk and stuff, it must be like 4 million damage. It was a lot of damage. It was great with everything up while double striking stuff. So very, very high potential for bursting things down. And I'm pretty happy with how the build turned out. So excited for revisiting it. Can be a bit complicated with the jewels and stuff, but hopefully we've covered most things in this guide. If you have any questions, you can drop by my Twitch channel at twitch.tv/Zizaran. Thanks for watching, and try to die less than I do.